I'm Chairman Willett.
Welcome back to our morning meeting of May 5th. Next up on our agenda is a Stormwater Impoundment Design Criteria Workshop. And Dan Kuntz, our district engineer, is with us.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of things the reason why I wanted to do this workshop, and it's really to try to give me some guidance on what I should focus on. And I think Neil and I briefly discussed it maybe a week or so ago, and then he suggested to come together and just really have a discussion, a kind of an open discussion in regards to the letter that was submitted. Soil conservation folks. And, you know, I kind of apologize in terms of the timeliness of all of this. 'Cause as I got started, you know, I'm just trying to get my feet wet. And so they were, at that time, they were wanting some information. A new resolution that would go before you in terms of signing and getting it approved to, I think that the whole idea is try to improve some of the water quality in the area. And so as I essentially got into my new position, there was a lot of things I was working on, and that wasn't one of them at the time. And so they ended up submitting a new letter back in March, you know, indicating, hey, we would really like this to go forward and you know, before you, and to get signed on a resolution to provide more design features, design criteria for development in specific areas. You know, they're talking about specifically about 1,000 feet around the lake, Cascade Lake, and that each development would essentially, in a sense, have more review of their stormwater and how it infiltrates into the lake area. And so I ended up getting some time and going through their resolution, and lots of questions started to pop into my head in terms of as I read the resolution. Is this the right overall resolution that should go before you in terms of signing? I thought maybe I should you know, get some more background and guidance. And one of the things I did was I reached out to our engineering firm, Parametrics, met with them, discussed it, and a few topics came up to be aware of before proceeding on. One of them was, do you guys really want me to go into a full-fledged review of this and how it would impact overall of the designs and the developments that would come before us in terms of approval? And there was, I mean, I have like lots of things in my head right now, but so essentially, as part of City of McCall went through a similar situation back in '97 when they updated their stormwater prevention, and ended up constantly going through a variance process for a lot of the developments that were occurring. And so they ended up passing an updated resolution that would help provide more structure in terms of their review of their stormwater, over and above what I think they kind of reduced their oversight in terms of that by this resolution. I essentially just want to get some guidance from you in terms of how you want me to proceed with this. you know, as I look through it, I think there might be some good things out of it, but ultimately, it's you guys that are gonna sign this resolution. And I would have to go more in terms of getting like a technical committee established to evaluate every aspect of this that they're trying to provide in this resolution that the Soil and Conservation Group submitted. Because I think that would probably be the best approach to get full compliance, or maybe not quite full compliance, but enough of a compliance through the development community that it provides good review, provides good content in terms of the overall developments and how we're establishing, stormwater quality, water quality here. I know there's a lot of sensitivity in terms of the lake, and quite honestly, it's not necessarily all of the development, but it's, as you could look at it as they call it a non-point source contaminant. That could be anybody that isn't essentially doing what they need to do to provide better quality within their property.
Yeah, it was, and just bring you two ladies up to speed on this. Dan and I, he first brought this to me, and read it all that, and it was like, I really struggle with this being in Dan's wheelhouse. Just because of I knew what they were asking for, and it's kind of like you said, Dan, City of McCall did something similar to this. To me, it seems like it should be more into, the building department or P&Z to be dealing with all this. Because it's basically another, like you say, parametrics or DEQ that would put another layer of evaluation on subdivision, or you want to build a house within 1,000 feet, and they're wanting another layer of, eyes to look at this. Could it be a good thing? Sure. But does it slow the world down also?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a little bit of that. I think there'll be some. I want to say that there's some benefit to it, but I think the only way for it to work in my own mind, and you guys tell me if I'm crazy or not, but you really need to have a wide range on that technical committee to provide some information. So if we are considering on changing or enhancing the overall statewide best management practices, we're following state. We essentially adopted that, and a lot of other jurisdictions have adopted too. So we're not the only ones. So it's like, do we want to continue on with this statewide best management practices, or follow the statewide best management practice, including this resolution that the soil conservation?
I actually think you make a good point that maybe this isn't the right wheelhouse for it to be in. I think it actually puts you in a position of conflict because you review every P&Z application. And so if you're determining the rules and then you're also reviewing the P&Z applications, I don't think that's appropriate.
That's why I kind of feel like it would be good to have a technical committee pulled together to help establish, if this is what you guys want to do, to help establish it. For sure, getting with the City of McCall, the reasons why they backed off on their initial stormwater best management practices, and updating their the resolution that was passed in 2016, modify that. And because the staff was being overwhelmed with the development that was coming and trying to accommodate it, it's almost like you have to do a review of each development on a case-by-case basis. But there's framework around it that I think there might be some benefit to it. Also, one of the topics that Parametrics brought up, which I think would be a good idea if we go this route, is to get with DEQ to verify in other areas similar to this, what has been done, how has it been successful, before we jump into a resolution. Like, I think it might provide some good guidance, but I don't want to necessarily impact the community in a way that either development issues are of concern or water quality is of concern. I think there's some balancing here that needs to happen before we just authorize that.
Yeah, I don't want to impact the process. I mean, we've got a good process now. I don't want to impact it to the level of like a NEPA, like the Forest Service has. And then you have to evaluate, and you got to go through all this whole nother process just to put in a house or subdivision or whatever that's already being addressed and done. And
So
I don't know.
So to me, there's two tracks here. One is we redo our entire process. I mean, in the subdivision process, we already have an engineer that is engineering their stormwater to our ordinance.
Right.
And so with what they're asking us is to create another level of oversight on top of that engineer in order to move forward. First of all, I don't believe that we should ever target one water body. This is a Valley County ordinance that should follow, not just Lake Cascade, but every place. But the other tract that we could look at is improving what our ordinance says currently to require more of the engineer that is actually providing this stormwater management for subdivisions. I don't know that this needs to be done, with 3 or more properties. Is this something that our ordinance could state if you are going to be developing 5 or more lots, or, what kicks in a subdivision and not create just the one-off situations out there? Because that's way, way too much for the amount of time and personnel that this county provides to this type of thing. So my thought is that, first of all, whatever we do is on everybody. We have a lot of conversations ongoing right now with control of those areas around these water bodies, so that's going to be another part of this conversation. But secondly, if this conversation improves our existing ordinance and what we're requiring of an engineer in a subdivision, I could see that. And maybe if you wanted to have an advisory council in order to advise how to improve our ordinance, that is one thing. I do not want to create another layer of government. We are a small county in Idaho. Yes, we have beautiful water bodies, and yes, we need to protect them. I'm not certain that we're not currently doing that with what process we already have, but I'm always willing to improve. But to create another layer, that's of concern to me.
And I'm not so sure it's not a layer that creates an undue burden for property owners.
Well, as you mentioned, there are a lot of tributaries that also, if we look at the potential development in those areas, primarily are along tributaries that go into.
And is 1,000 feet? I mean, is that
This
standard?
is
That's
where-
overreach? I mean,
This is where I'm not quite sure how to best guide what they're trying to do in terms of the getting better water quality. That's why I was thinking maybe the DEQ just discussion might give clarity in terms of how things are going, where things are at statewide, and then in other jurisdictions that have similar issues like we do here, challenges, I should say challenges, right? We see if there's a way that we could emulate another that has similar, and is a little further along in terms of when the stormwater quality.
I'd really like input from DEQ. This lake is not a lake, it is an irrigation reservoir, shallow. It's different than Payette, it's different than Worm Lake, it's different than everything else. I'd really like from DEQ, if we were to do this, what would be the end result?
Right.
We are still a shallow irrigation lake. And how much improvement are we going to see over time by this process? So because we could create an enormous nightmare for people and improve lake quality, not at all, 5%.
Or yeah.
Now, what does that look like? So that would be an interesting conversation with DEQ, if there's even the ability to find that out with this. I mean, I'm all about water quality. We are a county of, I think it's 10,000 lakes. We have a lot of water up here, and people come to visit us because of our water quality. So it is critical and imperative. Yes, the algae blooms on Cascade are an issue. I don't think we've identified yet what those algae blooms are coming from. Is it that?
Happening for decades, a couple decades.
Well, ever since they built the dam.
Yep.
You know, so that's what I'm,
Shallow lake,
yeah, and that's what I'm trying to,
form.
before we put a huge amount of process on top of what we're already doing, I'd really like to know what the end result of that process change would be. I think there's a lot more conversation about helping to try and find funding to do the testing and finding out that human component and whether the sewer is going to actually improve this, or we go overboard. I am interested in, is our ordinance strong enough? You know, and that might be something to give to parametrics. They've been doing this work quite some time for us. Or you can look at it. You know, maybe if there is a short window advisory committee to look at our ordinance and make sure we're strengthening it to the point we could.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. You guys think about that? But that takes a whole nother layer out.
I guess the other part of it, you want me to lead it.
I don't know that an advisory committee is necessary. I think we have a lot of experts here in the room with Dan and parametrics, and they have the opportunity to comment on every application. I think if there were big concerns and we weren't following state-led BMPs and stormwater prevention plans, that you guys would alert us, or would alert planning and zoning or the applicant or what have you.
Yeah. I mean, I can reach out to them. They think about, because they've been following the ordinance. Early 2000,
Sure.
published years.
Ask McCall, ask Coeur d'Alene. I mean, Coeur d'Alene also has a lake, Hayden Lake. I mean, there's a lot of resort communities, just like we are, that are trying to protect their water quality. We don't need to recreate the wheel.
No.
Let's find out maybe what some of those other cities
Yeah.
are doing, and if our ordinance can be improved.
And this lake's, you know, this reservoir is unique in that they just created a puddle and didn't look at, oh, we're just flooding a flat area. And they didn't realize this is going to create a warm lake. And because McCall, you can jump in late August, McCall's still cold. But it's a natural lake. But this thing got created without, I think, enough forethought of the depth of that lake. And so it's a unique body of water.
I think they created it for one specific purpose. I mean, it's owned by the irrigators.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all they thought about, was they wanted irrigation water. It wasn't the long-term recreation aspect of it. And yes, we can do things in order to potentially overcome that. It's critical we do it. It's a great fishery and we try and do all we can, but creating another layer of bureaucracy, I don't believe is appropriate to do that.
And it may not change the outcome.
Yeah, I don't think this is gonna have a big enough effect to warrant possibility of really some people coming and saying that we're putting an undue burden on them and then we're in lawsuits. I think there's a lot, like you mentioned, the South Lake Sewer, I think that's a really great, I think there's other, can we pull, we currently pull cold water from the bottom, can we figure out how to pull the hot water from the top? Type thing, I
I actually asked
Follow
Idaho
what you're
Power
saying.
at that energy summit, and they said, we have no idea what you're talking about. So BOR, at their meeting that they presented to us, we had a full conversation about changing where that water draw is from. They didn't even pass that along to Idaho Power. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah, I think there are some conversations there that we could further have.
So what do we want
Clerk Miller,
Dan to do?
wanted to intercede something?
I just didn't understand, just for the minutes, when you indicated that the Valley County ordinance wasn't strong enough. Did you mean the language? Do
That's
you want
what
me to
I'm-
elaborate?
I'm just wondering if it's clear enough, if there is enough, if there are enough, restrictions, not restrictions, if there's enough procedure or policy in it currently that we could maybe improve upon, in our requirements. Because really, if you're subdividing, we're asking for engineering, so somebody else is paying for that. And that is where we should improve. If there needs to be clarity and improvement happen, it needs to be with the language that we're talking to those developers, engineers about.
isn't that where you guys review the applications and make sure that it's appropriate?
Yeah,
That the applicant's engineer is correct?
Yeah, so we follow the statewide. In most cases, we go through the initial review of it. Comments come. Revising whatever plan. And there's a back check that is identified. So back. And then I also look through it as well.
Would you for us bring back to us information from City of McCall and maybe identify one or two other areas that, they also have lakes that are resort communities and, what are their processes? Maybe we can look at just updating what our current process is or current requirements as part of that ordinance.
Yeah, I'll go through it. We need to be, I want to make sure it's comparable to irrigation water that we currently have.
Yeah.
And look at a community similar to
Well, and one of the things that we heard from the residents of McCall particularly is they're very concerned with development around their drinking water.
here.
And so therefore, we do need to make sure that the county is always protecting drinking a water source. And City of Cascades well is at the southern end of that lake. So what is happening in the lake may very well impact a municipal water body or municipal water source. So we do need to make sure that we are, looking at all avenues. Just don't know that adding that extra layer of government is the way to go about it. Hope we can see what other people are doing. Maybe that is our first step anyway.
Okay, so you want me to contact the city of McCall and one other jurisdiction?
Find out what their process is, because that's what I think it is it's process and maybe what their ordinance looks like in order to, empower a developer's engineer. Maybe a little bit more information, but
Did you want to want me to contact DEQ at this point?
I think it would be helpful. I mean, how in-depth are they looking at our requests?
I
When
think
we're-
our planning and zoning staff was planning on having Lance come in and do a presentation to us.
Hmm.
You know, I think when we're getting involved with DEQ, then we're going between departments.
Lance is with DEQ or CDH? He's with DEQ.
Lance is with DEQ, Mike is with Central District Health. So I think that's on the, you know, I don't want to give you something or have you do something that's already in the works
Yeah.
with another
Ask Cindy
department.
about that.
Okay. I'll talk with Cinda.
Hopefully that's easier than forming a technical committee.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to come up with some suggestions, and then these are the guide us through this.
That's why I
The
wanted
other-
their input too. That's why I wanted you to present this, just to,
Well, and the other thing is right now is the priority of your time. I mean, we have huge road issues right now and funding issues for the roads. And we need to address those before we put a lot of additional work on any one of our employees in the road department. That is the highest priority right now. How do we fund our roads moving forward since we've lost our federal funding?
you know what, yeah, listen to this. Every one of these people that presented the Central District Health and this lady with the transit and that, unless everybody in the world is operating on grants. Grants to me are real iffy, you know, what if that plug gets pulled? And what's sustainable? You know, and that's, we need something sustainable. And the only sustainable thing out there is taxpayers. We're the only sustainable thing on the planet. You know,
Oh, and then there's other states taking away their property tax base, so therefore, let's
Yeah,
pray that we
that's-
don't have that happen to us too, so.
that would devastate us.
I would. So, yeah, I think hopefully that's good direction. At this time, we need you focused on roads and,
Yeah.
you know, doing a little bit of side work here to see what the next step may be, or if there is something we can do to be impactful.
I appreciate it, because I was struggling at how far do I go into this?
So I think it's very appropriate to come and talk with us first before any outside area, or any outside group gives direction to one of our employees without
Yeah.
for the board.
Well, I did want to do my own due diligence, kind of prep, giving you at least some information, so 30 to just enough information so you see where we need to go.
I do know that this is a large issue, and they spend an awful lot of time and energy on this, and we want to acknowledge that. We're appreciative of it. But there has to be prioritization at some moment in time, and right now that is that moment in time. We only have so many funds in order to expend on doing anything right now. All right, thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, thank you.
Bet.
Thank you
That
so much,
being-
Dan.
The last agenda item until this afternoon when we actually, oh no, wait, we do have one more. Let's bring in,
Mike,
we are gonna go into our executive session. I would move that we go into executive session 74-2061A to considering hiring a public officer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
second. Or,
We got a second. You got a roll call vote?
okay. Thompson, aye.
Pop and I.
Caldwell, aye.
Okay, we will be in executive
Thank you,
session,
Dan.
and after that, we will adjourn until the 3 o'clock joint City of McCall meeting.